I'm talking about low-powered wide area networks and the role they play in the Internet of Things. Now, the Internet of Things has become a commonly heard phrase. It's very abstract from everyday life, and some of you might not have heard of it, but it affects everything that we do. Some of you here today will be wearing a smartwatch, and a smartwatch needs battery and it needs communications for it to function properly. So if we want to capitalize on this so-called Internet of Things revolution that's happening across the world, how do we do that in somewhere like there, which is clearly in the middle of the mountains or hills between the counties of Powys and Gwynedd, where there's no mobile phone signal, there's no power, there's clearly no fibre optic. But then why would we want to sense anything there? Well, trees might be planted, for example. Why would we want to sense trees? Trees grown and recently planted are quite vulnerable, and scientists want to monitor them remotely. Yes, you can monitor them using satellites, but you can get more data about the soil conditions and how high the tree is growing. So that's some of the things that we can do with the Internet of Things. I'm pleased to say there's a solution in getting a signal to places like this, and it's called low-powered wide area network. And a very interesting flavour of low-powered wide area network is something called LoRaWAN, which stands for Long Range Wide Area Network. I think the picture there says 1,000 words. The traditional way of getting data remotely is by often using a solar panel, a small wind turbine, and a mobile phone signal, if you can get it, which is why this one's been located at the top of a hill. But a new way of doing it is using what's called the LoRaWAN signal, which is built into those sensors, and those sensors will actually last for several years at a time. So this sensor here, which I usually have in my pocket to show people, will last for 10 years, for example, if it can get a LoRaWAN signal. And the range of these things are pretty significant as well. So here's currently how most people would get a LoRaWAN signal. The picture on the left there is called a LoRaWAN gateway. So it's a shoebox-sized device, of which there are now hundreds here in Ceredigion, Wales, which is forwarding packets from hundreds of sensors across the county to their onward destination. And that provides us with data, and from data we can make data decisions, data-informed decisions. But what if you can't build your own gateway or buy a gateway? Well, actually you can use others securely, or if there is no LoRaWAN coverage where you are, you're in a really extreme, really remote area where there's nothing there, there are actually new satellite gateways available. Now that's not a CubeSat, which is being held there. That is a battery-powered satellite gateway, which will last on its batteries for 5 years. And what that does is take a signal from the satellite every 90 minutes or so. So the data might be old by the time it gets to you, by 90 minutes or more, but that's much better than having to drive around and carbon footprint and time and cost and everything else. So these new technologies are essentially connecting the unconnected. So the question here is, can rural outsmart the city? We live in a beautiful area here in Wales. We have the free space, the fresh air to think creatively. And all this new digital infrastructure is giving us is opportunities to sense anything, to look into data, to combine that data with existing data and do some innovation and get some really interesting outcomes. It's undeniable that the potential for gathering data through IoT devices and making sense of our environment is becoming much, much easier and much, much cheaper. And there is no end to the possibilities. There's even a mousetrap that tells you if it's been triggered. I'll be showing that in a bit. The way innovators across Wales and the world harnessing IoT is quietly revolutionising how we do so many things. Across both public and private sectors, we are seeing a fundamental shift in how we can make evidence-based decisions. Data from devices can help make those decisions. For example, in England, they're using LoRaWAN to address water leaks. For example, so as here in Wales, we're looking at how we better plan for floods and monitoring vaccines, which has to be kept at a certain temperature on farms, for example. And often these farms are remote with no kind of connectivity, and this is where IoT and LoRaWAN in particular can help. But as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Just because we can collect interesting data from all kinds of areas doesn't mean that we should. Many will be treading new ground when it comes to the Internet of Things, and it's essential that before carrying out any IoT deployment, we ask ourselves, is this ethical? Is LoRaWAN secure? Well, it's encrypted, it's even got some secret keys, but cybersecurity isn't a black and white matter. Like layers in an onion, there are different layers in cybersecurity, so you have to take all of this into account before making a deployment. It's not a case of sticking a sensor to monitor a tree and thinking it's all safe and secure. There are a few issues that you have to think about here. For those who don't know where the last picture was and where this picture is, it's of Munt. It's a beautiful, beautiful beach, best beach in the world, here in Wales, Cymru, Britain, Gales. Don't visit. But little old Munt could be the smartest beach in the world, and that's because it has IoT, it has LoRaWAN here. It's been enabled by the very smart Verwig community councils. So you even have smart councils these days. So what's the data used for? It's used, for example, in the defibrillator. When the door is opened, it indicates a potential emergency. It informs the cafe owner of any new trading opportunities, so we're able to count cars, for example. Traditionally, the cafe's been closed during the winter. Data provides insights into that. Should I have opened on that day, or what was it like this time last year? And the more data you collect over a period of time, the more useful it becomes, but you have to start somewhere. It also informs and empowers the community council to push for more resources from the county council. They now have evidence. For example, the estimated traffic levels going down to Munt was double of what was originally predicted, and it was data that provided that information, powered by LoRaWAN. And the weather data is useful as well to compare the differences in temperature local. We hear about hyper-local weather. Such a big difference. 5 degrees difference between Munt and Cardigan sometimes. It's phenomenal. And it's useful as well to tell us if the steep road leading up from Munt needs gritting. Is it freezing there? This is the LoRaWAN legendary by now mousetrap. For those of us into catching mice, as you can see, we would set the mouse. Mouse comes along, my daughter's mouse by the way, and you get a notification just to say that it's been caught. Now, there are businesses out there starting to use this type of technology. So traditionally, you'd have to go around and check the mouse traps. But with IoT, with LoRaWAN, you can leave them there and get notified. So you're not wasting, you're not contributing to congestion, poor air quality, cost, etc., etc. So this is just one example of some very, very exciting sensors provided by and enabled by LoRaWAN. I should add that the battery life on this, it isn't 10 years, but I've had one and I've been demonstrating it almost every week now for the past 3.5 years, and the battery's still going. What other things can we do with LoRaWAN? Well, all of these applications, smart health, waste management, Internet of Trees, smart agriculture, environment. Now some would say, well, we could already do this, but the point being, to do all of those things you need power. And if you haven't got power in a rural area, because it's costly, or you don't want to put a big solar panel or a little wind turbine, this is where LoRaWAN differentiates from those traditional ways of sensing. It revolutionises how we sense things. So, what do we need to do to take advantage of this Internet of Things revolution that's happening, particularly in the LoRaWAN space? We're in a competition of ideas. We all have ideas. And some of the best ideas for low-powered wide area networks like LoRaWAN come from non-technical people. So if somebody has an idea, they should push for it. Imagine, for those of us alive in 1997, I know some of the faces here, you definitely weren't here, would have really understood the power of the internet back then. I referenced 1995 because that's when I think I started using the internet. What would we have done? I would ask ourselves, are we in a 1995 moment for IoT and LoRaWAN with the emergence and maturity of these new sensors? There are more organisations and individuals promoting LoRaWAN across the world, from Wales to New South Wales. It's an open ecosystem, so there's no vendor lock-in. Anybody can create their own network. Anybody can create their own sensors. And we can empower communities, villages and towns to become more smarter and more sustainable. So it's a case of educating, innovating, testing, failing sometimes, that will happen, succeeding, repeating and driving the revolution. Thank you. Diolch.